I got a request from a friend today for a points distributor for a small block Mopar. So let's go to the Mopar Cabinet of Mystery and see what we have. Oh, Cabinet of Mystery, show us your grandiosity. Well, we got some bearings, wires, turbo stuff, air cleaners, torque converters, clutches, pistons, slant 6. Hey, There's one right there. Ooh, it's looking a little too rough. And it's got some damages. So let's see if we can get it fixed up and ready for a new owner. We remove the screws, and the vacuum pod is a 6.5. It's not an adjustable one, but it's a good start. We'll test it with a vacuum gauge to make sure it actuates. There's a tiny gap right here, and that is actually the limiter for the vacuum advance. I actually make any advance pod any limit by putting a shim so that it can't go past that. But from the factory, a 6.5 is a good starting point. This rust will destroy the points rubbing block really fast. So we've got to take care of that. And while we're at it, we'll just clean all the connections and everything, make sure that it is ready to go into service. Remove the points hold down screw. The points should slide off of the little shaft there. There you go. And this should be nice and clean so that it moves freely. And then this whole assembly here just pulls out. And we're going to make sure, while we're in here, we're going to make sure this advancing mechanism is nice and clean and moving freely. Because right now, this distributor is very tight. It definitely needs a good cleaning. It's been on the shelf for a long time. And while we're at it, we will see how much mechanical advance is in this slotted plate. The center has a little felt in there, and then even further in there, there's a little clip that you can grab. You might need longer nose pliers to get it. Weapons of choice would be probably first off long nose pliers. Grab the clip, which you can't see, and once I pull it out, I'll be able to show you. Okay, and that's what that clip looks like. It rides on a groove in there, so you got to grab it one side and pull. And you probably have to squeeze it back down a little bit more before you push it back in. But now, what it does without that clip is release this. Well, we might have to put some solvent down the center here to loosen this up. There. See, it's starting to move. Okay, here it goes. Here it goes. There it goes. Okay. Now we can clean out the mechanisms. This mechanism is a 15. You can see by the way that it is. L15. So this is going to give you 15 degrees, which is 30 at the crank. That's too much. So we're going to talk to our potential owner and discuss with him how much initial advance he'd like in his engine. And then we're going to take this to the cleaning wheel and clean it up good so that it does not wear out the rubbing block. The weights and springs just slide off, and then you can remove this pin with a tiny nail and a hammer. Just tap it out into a socket or something like that, and then this whole shaft will, with a little bit of perhaps lubrication, just slide right out of there. Use a drill index to figure out the size, the diameter of your retainer pin, and then go one size larger to drill your replacement. Since this one's broken, we're going to make one. I was able to find a piece of aluminum, but you could, most hardware stores will sell brass, nice and tight, and it goes up where it needs to. It's not going to interfere because, see, it's smaller than this shaft here. So what we do is we hold it, we're going to carefully mark how far away from this flat face to make the first hole. We also have a washer that goes there, and we do not want to make it too tight. So you can err gently on the side of caution, and the tiniest bit of up and down play will not harm the operation of this particular type of distributor. Okay, I have the hole drilled from one side. I've gone back down to the smaller bit, and I'm going to use the smaller bit to align it on the shaft. And then I'm going to drill the rest of the way through. Then I'm going to re-drill through with the larger hole so the pin can be taken in and out, because we don't want to dead end the pin, because then we'll never get it back out. So now that it's lined up, we will use this drill bit to drill all the way through, and then we'll use the next size larger to drill it out so that we can push it all the way through so it's not dead ended. Clean and lubricate everything, and then gently tap your pin back in. There you go. No problem there. I don't know what the exact specification for end play is, but that amount is going to be a lot less than with the other broken piece. You could put a slightly thicker washer in there if you were worried. It's not going to affect anything that has to do with your timing. Breaker points are designed to carry electricity from the coil, which will be connected here through the circuit, goes through this metal band and to this tip. It grounds, or actually conducts, through the body of the distributor through this other point, which is connected to this plate. This plate makes contact through the other side of this plate. These three brass tabs are contacts. They allow the vacuum advance to work independently of the mechanical advance, but require the points that's set right here to ground through this plate and through the brass contacts into the body, through these screws into the body of the distributor. If any of these contact points, such as this rusty burn spot on the underside of this moving plate, are damaged too much, you may not get good points operation and electrical gremlins that are not easy to trace. On new vehicles, this might have taken hundreds of thousands of miles to develop, but this was left in a junkyard, maybe without a distributor cap on, and got some corrosion in it, and then used again, and, well, problems. So, when you're remanufacturing, make sure things get cleaned up, polish that up, make sure all these points are good for the proper ground that they were designed to do. This rarely seen spring clip holds the plate, but allows it to move up and down. It's even got a little tiny clip to keep it from popping off or rotating. The mechanical advance is limited by these slots. You can see from the factory they stamped it. This is a 15, which gives it 30 degrees of mechanical advance, way too much. So what we're going to do, this little piece right here, this metal is very hard to weld to, so I'm going to weld it to this center. I'm going to heat and bend this over, and then we'll be able to adjust this tab to limit how much movement you get, and therefore you can control the amount of advance. And if you ever want to go back to factory, you just nip it off with some kind of grinder or something like that, and you're back to 30, but you'd never want to be at 30. You generally maybe want 20 degrees of mechanical advance. You can set your initial timing at 10 or 12. You get another 20, 22 maybe out of your mechanical, and then the rest is vacuum advance. That's going to give you a nice sharp pop. And for the year and model of car that it's going in, this should work really well, and if he doesn't like how it performs, we can pretty easily adjust it. Not pretty, but more than strong enough. A couple of little blobs, we'll file them down, make them clean so they don't interfere with anything, and then we'll just bend that tab down into the slot and then dress it from below to make sure it doesn't hit anything down underneath. I'm going to heat that just a little bit, although I'm sure it's pretty hot right now. Alright, so that's how we're going to do it with this one. We've bent it down, dressed it at the bottom, and now it doesn't matter if one gets stopped, they both get stopped. And this is actually going to hold it out, so it's going to start at a static location that's less, and not go, so it doesn't have as far to go. Either way, if you limit one, it limits both. And so that should be enough. Actually, that's more than enough. And we'll experiment. We can file it down, bend it more, remove it, start over, whatever we like to do. Yeah, you could see comparatively. If you have more questions about recurving your distributor, you could see videos by Professor P at Slant Daily Garage on YouTube, and he has some really, really great content that will help you recurve your Mopar distributor. We don't need no stinking math. That's about right. Okay, I'm going to try and show you now that with this stop, you see this one can only return so far, which is okay. It's just kind of out there waiting. And when this one comes off the stop, this one will also be able to move. So it limits the travel that the Advance can make for both weights. It doesn't really matter because they're linked. They're always been linked. So we could put a stop on both, but it's really, there's no reason to. It only needs one stop. So you could see that the travel is limited by about 1/3, which is about what I want. And this could be filed further or removed if it needed to be, but this is going to be what gives you the right thing. Now, this is the heavy spring, and you see there's a space. The heavy spring doesn't even touch until the light spring is stretched a little bit, which is pretty normal way that it's set up. So, and some people will tell you take the heavy spring out and put 2 light springs in. So we don't have another light spring today, so we're just going to leave the heavy spring in there. That's kind of how it was from the factory, and that sort of slows the Advance curve down, but not really that much. Once this gets spinning, it's going to all go in, you could see. And what that does is that aligns these lumps on the pointy lobe. It moves those in relation to the cam as these go out from centrifugal force, pushes these out, and that makes this turn and advances these bumps in relation to the cam. And then the vacuum advance is a completely separate mechanism with those plates that goes on top of this. We're going to put that together now, because the only other thing that thing needs is this little clip down the center here. And honestly, even if you didn't put that clip in there, you push it down and it'll clip on a groove in there. But even if you didn't put it in there, this isn't really going to want to come up, because the distributor cap is going to be holding that down. Another minor detail is make sure your clips articulate, lubricate in there. They should move around, but they should not come out. So you're supposed to stake them. What that means is you put it in, maybe with some grease in there, and then you take a little punch right beside where it goes in. You take a little punch and you make a divot so it won't rock out of there, so when you're working on the car it doesn't fall out and get lost in the engine bay. So the stake on this one was, well, I think it was broken, so we have to restake the replacement one in there. All right, the old aluminum wouldn't stake, so we drilled through, and now we're going to put a little twist tie safety wire through there so that it doesn't drop out when you're changing out the distributor cap, because we're just that nice. All right, now it's safety wired. Forever guarantee. They didn't do that from the factory because a stake is cheaper. This side still has a good stake. It doesn't want to come out of there. So we just put some lubrication in there so it doesn't get too corroded. This is starting to look like a distributor. Time to put the points back together. In addition to the screw holes on the side lining up, from the factory, it has a tiny, tiny little pin that guides the bottom plate in place. Then, as you can see, your screws should line up pretty good. Put them in tight, but not too tight, and we're almost there. Under that screw, you can see there's a slot, and that's your adjustment slot, and there is very little adjustment left. The rubbing plate for these points is probably about worn out. You can see there's enough to make it open and close. It does hit, but very little adjustment. So we can get it set up so that it will work, but I'm going to suggest to the new owner that they get themselves a replacement set of points so that wearing block can have adjustment for the future. But this will give them a visual reference to which set of points that they need. So we're definitely going to put it in there and install it for them. But yeah, I don't have that part right now, but I'm sure they are capable of finding one online. There is a more elegant way to put this together, but the truth of it is the vacuum advance slides underneath here and under this plate. This is spring-loaded, so if we just push it this way a little bit and pull up, the vacuum advance pin can slip under there and become installed. Come on now. Anyways, you could just kind of jam it. You don't have to be nice to it. And there it goes. Now, you put the screws in. That line that also lines up on that has an alignment pin and a screw. Maybe that alignment pin's not right. Okay. This vacuum advance doesn't like that alignment pin. This must be an aftermarket. So I think we might need to drill for that alignment pin so that this will work properly. I'm pretty sure I was matching this up to an overall setting that I was looking for. So and I didn't test it yet. You want to put vacuum on it and make sure that it doesn't leak, and make sure that it pulls the distributor plate at a reasonable approximation to manifold vacuum, like it should. With the vacuum advance pod installed, the points plate is static, and we can see that the points setting is, like points. So that's good. That'll, be a proper feeler gauge. But like I said, we're going to let the new owner put new points in or adjust them as he feels necessary. Points and condenser. He's going to want to replace those as well. I'll include these so he has reference. And I have a tag. We're going to put that back on, but the changes we've made to the mechanical advance are going to actually make this, not accurate anymore. And last but not least, there was a last. We're going to install our tiny little felt pad in the center here, because that's how it's supposed to be. I don't know. And then we also need the wire that goes to our coil. Now the coil wire moves every time the vacuum advance moves, so it wiggles back and forth a billion times. Every time you start the car, every time you rev the car, it's going to move. So where it goes through the body of the distributor over here, right there where it comes in, that wire is going to get wiggled over and over and over and over. I suggest that you replace that wire so that there's no concern that it is, building up resistance or damage. And the wire that we took out of this was pretty brittle. So I'm going to ask the new owner to get himself a replacement wire that goes from the points and condenser to his coil. This little bracket will mount right here. The condenser will go here, and there is a little mount right there. And the wire that goes to the coil, it sandwiches between these two nuts right with the condenser. And that completes, once I put the tag, I got to take one of these screws back out and put the tag on, and that will complete our rebuild and recurve. All right, one last look while it's complete. Like I said, that's what the wires are going to look like, although I want that replaced. I found a screw so that it can be mounted down, and the points do pop when you spin. It moves nice and free. It's clean. It's got a new bushing down here. It's got very little play in there. It's just a nice piece now. Period correct factory style distributor, and it's going to provide excellent service with just a set of new points. And very cost effective. And I don't do this professionally. This is for a friend. He's going to enjoy it. He's working on a Barracuda. I can't wait to see it going. If you find this interesting, check out my channel for more tips and fixing things. See this very dirty spot? That is where it should be making contact with one of these brass pivots, which then makes contact to the lower plate and then will be screwed to the body of the distributor where it grounds to the engine, making sure all of these locations, the brass points, the underside of the moving plate, and the contact where the points ground to that plate are all good and clean, will give you much better conductivity and a more positive and reliable spark when your engine is operating. Do not neglect that if you're doing a full rebuild, especially if it was left out like this one in the elements and got some corrosion in it. Moisture in or grease can cause all kinds of gremlins. This side is a little bit greasy, but the other side I found rust, so I had to polish it down.